November 8, 1971, 10:33 p.m. Frank Lucas stood outside Rao's restaurant in East Harlem, the most exclusive Italian establishment in New York City. Inside, waiting at table 4, sat Vincent the Gigante, acting boss of the Genovese crime family, along with 6 of his most trusted captains. They'd summoned Frank for a meeting. 1 black man, 7 Italian mobsters, and a conversation that would either make Frank Lucas the most powerful independent operator in New York or end with his body floating in the East River. Frank's driver, his brother Huey, gripped the steering wheel. "Frank, this is crazy. Let me come in with you." Frank adjusted his tie, a simple navy blue number, no flash, no gold. "If I walk in there with backup, they'll think I don't trust them. If I don't trust them, they won't trust me. And if nobody trusts anyone, somebody dies tonight. What if they kill you anyway?" Frank smiled, that calm, calculating smile that made people underestimate him. "Then make sure Mama gets my life insurance policy. It's in the safe." He stepped out of the Lincoln Continental and walked toward the restaurant alone, carrying nothing but a leather briefcase and the most dangerous weapon he possessed, preparation. To understand why this meeting was happening, you need to understand the war that had been brewing in Harlem for 3 years. Since 1968, when Bumpy Johnson died, the Italian families had been trying to reclaim territory they believed belonged to them. Harlem's economic operations had always been a point of contention, and with Bumpy gone, they saw an opportunity. Frank Lucas had other ideas. Frank didn't inherit Bumpy's empire, he built his own, smarter and more efficient. While the Italian families controlled distribution in other boroughs through violence and intimidation, Frank created a legitimate business model. He established import-export companies, created quality control standards, and built a distribution network that operated more like a Fortune 500 company than a street operation. His innovation was revolutionary: eliminate the middlemen, go directly to suppliers in Southeast Asia, establish legitimate business relationships, and create a brand, Blue Magic, that represented reliability and quality. The profit margins were extraordinary because the business model was efficient. By 1971, Frank was worth an estimated $20 million. He owned apartment buildings, employed hundreds of people, and reinvested heavily in Harlem's community. He paid for scholarships, funded church programs, and ensured that families who fell on hard times had food on their tables. But success attracts attention, and Frank's success was attracting the wrong kind. The Genovese family had been watching Frank's operation grow. They'd sent representatives in 1969, offering partnership, their word for tribute. Frank had declined politely. They'd sent enforcers in 1970, trying intimidation. Frank's people had defended their territory without escalating to war. Now, in 1971, Vincent Gigante was taking a different approach: a sit-down, a conversation, a chance to resolve things diplomatically before someone made a decision everyone would regret. The invitation had come through proper channels. A mutual associate, a legitimate businessman named Lou Roth, who did business with both Frank and the Italians, delivered the message: the Chin wants to meet. He's offering respect. He's asking for the same. Frank had spent 2 weeks preparing for this meeting. Not with weapons or muscle, but with information, strategy, and leverage. He'd researched every captain who would be in that room. He knew their business interests, their family situations, their vulnerabilities. He'd documented every interaction between his organization and theirs, every attempt at negotiation, every act of aggression they'd initiated. More importantly, Frank had prepared an offer. Not a surrender, not a partnership on their terms, but a business proposal that would make refusing him more expensive than accepting him. The door to Rao's opened. A hostess, young and nervous, recognized Frank immediately. Everyone in New York knew Frank Lucas by 1971, even if they pretended not to. "Mr. Lucas, they're expecting you. Table 4. Frank walked through the restaurant. It was nearly empty. Gigante had reserved the entire place for this meeting. The few diners present were Genovese associates, positioned strategically throughout the room. Guards, witnesses, or both. Table 4 was in the back corner. Vincent Gigante sat at the head, a man in his early 40s with a sharp mind hidden behind an eccentric public persona. In public, Gigante would later wander the streets in a bathrobe, pretending to be mentally incompetent to avoid prosecution. But in private, in rooms like this, he was one of the most brilliant criminal strategists in America. To his right sat Anthony Fat Tony Salerno, a Genovese captain who controlled construction rackets. To his left, Michelle Mike Miranda, who handled political connections. Four other captains filled the remaining seats, each one a powerful operator in their own right. Frank approached the table. Every eye tracked him. Every hand was visible, resting on the table, a sign of non-aggression, but Frank noticed two men near the kitchen door, hands inside their jackets. "Mr. Lucas," Gigante said, his voice smooth and controlled. "Thank you for coming." "Mr. Gigante," Frank replied, setting his briefcase on the table. "Thank you for the invitation." Gigante gestured to an empty chair. "Please, sit." Frank sat down, his back to the wall, an old habit learned from Bumpy Johnson. "Never sit with your back exposed. Can we offer you something? Wine? Food? Rouse has the best marinara in New York." "I appreciate that, but I'm fine. Let's talk business." Gigante smiled. "Direct. I respect that. So let me be direct too. You've built something impressive in Harlem, Frank. Really impressive. But you've built it in our backyard, and that creates complications." "Complications for who?" "For everyone. The families have had arrangements in place for decades. Territories, operations, understandings. When someone operates outside those arrangements, it creates instability." Frank nodded slowly. "I understand tradition. I respect it. But I'm not operating outside any arrangement because I never agreed to one in the first place." Fat Tony leaned forward. "That's not how this works, kid. You don't get to just." Gigante raised a hand, silencing him. "Let the man speak." Frank continued, his voice calm and measured. "I'm not a soldier in anyone's army. I'm not a captain in anyone's crew. I'm an independent businessman who operates legitimate enterprises. Import-export, real estate, community investment. Everything I do is legal, documented, and taxed." "Legal," Gigante repeated, with a slight smile. "That's an interesting word choice." "It's an accurate word choice. I learned something from Bumpy Johnson. The best way to operate is in plain sight, through legitimate channels, where everything can withstand scrutiny." Michelle Miranda spoke up. "We know what you're doing, Frank. We're not stupid. The import-export business, the quality control standards, we know what that really means." "Then you also know," Frank replied, "that even if you think you know what it means, proving it is impossible. Because I've made sure every business transaction can be explained, documented, and defended." The table went quiet. This was the moment Frank had been preparing for, the moment where he established his position not through threats, but through undeniable logic. Frank opened his briefcase. The captains tensed, hands moving slightly. But Frank pulled out a folder, nothing else. "I brought something to show you. Numbers. Real numbers." He slid the folder to Gigante, who opened it slowly. "That's a financial breakdown of Harlem's economic activity over the past 3 years. Not my operation specifically, but the entire neighborhood. What I want you to see is page 3. Gigante flipped to page 3. His eyebrows raised slightly. Community investment has increased 340% since 1968. Unemployment has dropped 27%. Property values have increased 31%. Crime, and this is important, crime has decreased 44%. Frank leaned forward. "Now ask yourself, Mr. Gigante, what happens if I'm not there? What happens if this meeting ends badly and Harlem goes back to what it was before? Chaos. Instability. Violence. And who does that hurt?" "It hurts everyone," Gigante said quietly. "Exactly. It hurts the community. It hurts businesses. It hurts your operations in adjacent neighborhoods because chaos spreads. But most importantly, it attracts attention. Federal attention. The kind of attention that comes with task forces and RICO indictments. Fat Tony scoffed. You're threatening us with the feds? I'm not threatening anyone, Frank said calmly. I'm explaining reality. The reason Harlem is stable right now is because I've created order. I've created legitimate businesses that employ people, invest in infrastructure, and keep the streets quiet. If that stability disappears, if this turns into a war, everyone loses. Gigante studied Frank for a long moment. You're not afraid of us. I respect you, Frank corrected. But fear? No. Because fear makes you make bad decisions. And I didn't come here to make bad decisions. I came here to make a good one. And what decision is that? Frank pulled out a second document. A business proposal. A real one, not a disguised tribute system. He slid it across the table. I'm offering you exclusive contracts for construction and waste management services for all my properties in Harlem. That's 47 buildings, 12 businesses, and growing. Guaranteed contracts, market rates, no interference with your other operations. Fat Tony looked at the proposal. Market rates? Why would we accept market rates when we could just? Because market rates from 47 guaranteed contracts is more profitable than fighting for territory that will cost you men, money, and federal attention, Frank interrupted. And because if you accept this proposal, I have plans to expand into the Bronx within 2 years. More buildings, more contracts, more guaranteed business. Gigante leaned back in his chair. You're offering us legitimate business. I'm offering you partnership without conflict. You get paid, I get to operate, nobody goes to war, nobody goes to prison. Everybody wins. Except we don't control Harlem. You never controlled Harlem, Frank said, and for the first time his voice carried an edge. Bumpy didn't let you control it. I'm not going to let you control it. But what you can have is something better than control. You can have profit without risk. The room was absolutely silent. Frank had just told the Genovese family that they couldn't have what they wanted, while simultaneously offering them something valuable enough that refusing seemed illogical. Gigante looked at his captains, reading their faces. Fat Tony looked skeptical but interested. Michelle Miranda was nodding slowly. The others were calculating, weighing options. You've got balls, Frank, Gigante finally said. Coming in here alone, telling us we can't have something, then offering us a consolation prize. It's not a consolation prize, Frank replied. It's better than what you'd get from a war. And you know it. Gigante smiled, a genuine smile this time. You know what? You're right. A war costs money, costs men, attracts feds. Your proposal makes sense. But I need something else. What? I need to know that if we accept this, you're not going to expand beyond Harlem and the Bronx without talking to us first. I need to know we have a real relationship, not just contracts. Frank nodded. Agreed. Any expansion beyond those territories, we discuss first. You get first opportunity for service contracts. And if someone else tries to move into Harlem? Someone who doesn't have your diplomatic approach? Then we handle it together. Because instability hurts both of us. Gigante extended his hand. We have a deal. Frank shook it. One firm grip, eye contact maintained. And that handshake was an understanding. This wasn't submission, it wasn't dominance. It was mutual respect between two professionals who understood that smart business was better than stupid war. One more thing, Gigante said. Why'd you really come in here alone? Frank smiled. Because if I brought protection, you'd see me as a threat. If I came alone with a good proposal, you'd see me as a partner. And partners are more valuable than enemies. Gigante laughed, genuine and loud. Bumpy taught you well. He taught me that power isn't about how many men you have. It's about making yourself too valuable to destroy. Frank Lucas walked out of Raoul's restaurant at 11:47 p.m. Huey was still in the car, practically vibrating with anxiety. "How'd it go?" "We have a deal," Frank said simply. "What kind of deal?" "The kind where everybody makes money and nobody dies." "The best kind." The agreement Frank made that night held for years. The Genovese family got millions in legitimate contracts. Frank got to operate independently in Harlem without interference. When federal investigations eventually came, both sides had documented legal business relationships that withstood scrutiny. But more importantly, Frank Lucas proved something that night that became legendary in New York's business community: the smartest move isn't always the strongest move. Sometimes the smartest move is walking into a room alone, armed with nothing but a good proposal and the confidence that logic beats violence every time. Years later, Vincent Gigante would tell associates, "Frank Lucas was the only man who ever came to one of our meetings and left with more power than when he walked in. Not because he threatened us, but because he offered us something better than what we wanted." If this story of courage, intelligence, and negotiation inspired you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you believe real power comes from preparation, not intimidation. Share this with someone who needs to understand that the best weapon is often a good business proposal. What would you have done in Frank's position? Let me know in the comments. More legendary stories coming soon.